What's up, everybody? This podcast was amazing. I just appreciate Jess so much. She's so humble, but Jess has really helped scale from when I was at 1 or 2 homes up to the 25 homes. That would not be possible without Jess understanding the management of a co-living property and what that looks like and what that feels like. And so she knows the details. She knows the nuts and the bolts. So this is more about really, how do you run a co-living company? What are those things that really make it work? How do you vet the tenants? And what are some of the things that could go wrong in a co-living company? So hopefully you will enjoy this, and hopefully it will inspire you to maybe get over some of those fears of pushing through and going into co-living. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Scale Your Real Estate Podcast, where we help you do just that, scale your real estate. And I have a super awesome guest today that I'm so honored to know and have known for the past few years. Her name is Jessica Barkley, and Jessica manages over 150 co-living units, co-living doors. She manages other, single tenant properties on her own. Her and her husband own properties as well. And she is here to give us all the juice on co-living. So Jessica, welcome.
Hi, Sam. How are you today?
Now I got to give Jessica this huge shout out. She was like, you better say this, because she's here on this podcast even though she's not feeling 100%. And so thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. I've totally lost my voice. So just bear with me today as I sound like this.
You got it. So Jessica, I got to tell you, Jess and I have worked in the capacity of, she has managed all of my wife and I's properties for, how many years has it been now?
In July, it'll be 3 years.
Really? Yes. Wow. Time goes by so fast. And truthfully, it started as kind of a part-time thing, right? We're like, we got these properties and we need some help managing them. And it's really grown to something where it's, Jess is managing a team and handling every little detail about these properties. So it's pretty cool. And so it's cool to have you in that capacity. But I got to be honest, when I first mentioned, one of the questions I really wanted to ask you was, when I first came to you and explained co-living to you, what was your initial reaction to all these people sharing a house, sharing bathrooms? Like, what was your initial reaction?
So I know that we've talked about this before, but when I initially interviewed with you guys, it was in the thick of COVID. COVID was, the world was shut down. And I remember, I did a Zoom interview with you guys, and I got off and I'm like, there's no way in the middle of COVID that a bunch of random people are going to want to live together. This is never going to work. So we always laugh that now here we are almost 3 years later, and we have 150 plus tenants, that it does actually work very well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of forgot. I always forget that it was in the middle of COVID and we did that. Yeah. I had a ton of people that were always like, well, you must have lost a ton of tenants during COVID. But I don't know, because I don't keep track of all the numbers as closely as you do. But we didn't lose a lot of tenants over COVID, did we? Or did we? Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. So Jessica, most of our people that are going to be listening to this show are maybe they're in real estate, they've invested in real estate, they want to invest in real estate, they're kind of tired of maybe what the system has taught them about invest in a 401k or an IRA, and they want a faster path, they want a different way to achieve financial freedom. So in your mind, because I know you're not just in co-living, you're in other types of real estate too, in your mind, what are the benefits of investing in real estate?
Tax write-offs is a great part of it. It helps people who want to build wealth, who want to build retirement, just getting into real estate, whether they're working a regular 9 to 5, whether they just want to supplement their income. I think that real estate is never a bad investment, regardless of the state of our economy. So I think real estate is always a solid investment. People always need a place to live.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting point. It's like, no matter where the economy is at, people are going to need and want housing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was growing up, I'm 41, but I remember growing up, like my parents had impeccable credit, but they had an 18% interest rate on their house that we owned. And so, people talk
Wow.
about rates being high now. They're higher than they were, but they're still much lower than they were, 30 years ago.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember 18%. I remember like 9 and 10 when my parents were like buying properties and stuff, or
Yep.
not that they bought a bunch of properties, but they were like buying their home. And yeah, so people are like, "Oh, it's 7%. It's so
Yeah.
high." And it's like, "No."
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think is so interesting for listeners to understand too is like I always tell people, it doesn't actually matter what the interest rate is. Like as long as the house cash flows.
Yep.
Right? Like the interest rate could be 100% as long
Yeah.
as it still makes you money as the investor, right? Like,
Yeah.
so what for you, you're in different types of real estate. So you've been in the co-living game for a while now. So compare for somebody that might be listening to this, compare like co-living and pros and cons. Like you don't have to make co-living sound awesome, even though I know you spend a lot of time in that, but like compare co-living with like renting out to a single tenant. What would you say are some of the pros and the cons of going the co-living method or co-living route?
So I manage a triplex. So we have 3 units in this. They each rent for $1,200 a month. So that property brings in $3,600 a month. That's on single family, 3 single family units in a triplex. Then I look at, say, one of our houses that has 7 or 8 tenants, and that's bringing in double. So one house is bringing in double what 3 units bring in. So if you invest right, if you do it right, I personally feel that co-living has a much better return than, say,
Yeah.
a single family unit would.
Yeah. So just straight up, the cash flow's better.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to just money, what the property's bringing in a month. It's much better
Yeah.
than a single family, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's interesting. One of the things I've always appreciated about you, Jess, and you've even encouraged me to go more in this direction, is the community aspect too. So like, yes, the cash flow, like if you're
Yes.
putting, but there's been times where I've tried to systematize stuff and be like, well, let's not do, in-person showings or this. And you're like, no, like that sets us apart. It still makes us a
Yes, it
community. And
does.
I've always appreciated that about you. You've kind of
Yeah.
kept me on the straight and the narrow when it comes to that. So what do you see as the community benefits of co-living? Like, because you're in it every day, like you hear from the tenants, maybe even talk about some of the good pieces and the negative pieces when it comes to the community aspects of it.
So I think for us, just that hands-on, really kind of knowing who I am, knowing who Dan is my assistant, knowing who Dan is, and just making sure that they know who their management team is, who their maintenance is. A lot of apartment rental complexes or companies, you don't know who your management team is. You don't know who to reach out to. So we're very much about keeping things small, even though we are, fairly large, of people knowing who we are. We do like to do, community events a couple times a year. We did a Christmas party this year. Also, some Friday nights I'll just be like, hey, let's send pizza to the house. And I mean, the tenants love those kinds of things. Also, it's really nice. I'll get messages sometimes from people, hey, you really helped me out of a difficult situation. Thank you for giving me a chance. Like, I like knowing that what we're doing is helping people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Do you think that level of community, honest answer, is scalable? Like maybe someone's listening to this and they're thinking like, well, yeah, that's cool if you're at, one level, but if you're going to scale to big time, and this because you and I have worked with some companies, we've helped coach some companies, you and I together, that are bigger, and some of their beliefs were, well, if I can't have the personal touch and be super big. So I'm curious what your take is on that. Can you have the personal touch that we get to do now and continue to scale and grow like we are?
100%, as long as you have the right systems in place. I have learned that from when we were small, when I started with you, as we've grown, that if you have the systems in place and the right people, you can do anything, no matter how big or small you are.
Wow, that's awesome. Systems and people.
Yes.
Jot that down. So let's talk about some of those systems. So like, what are some of the systems that you have in place right now to manage 150 co-living tenants, sometimes 8 or 9 people in a house, right? So like, what are some of those systems that make that run smoothly that you think are maybe some of the most important ones? Obviously, there's a ton of systems, right? But what are some of the most important ones?
So I would say probably as far as rent collection and maintenance, apartments.com. That's a great free avenue that we use to collect rent each month. Do maintenance requests through there, very simplified. We do applications, everything through there. So on the financial side of things, they're great. We use Telegram for all of our houses. So each of our houses has a house chat and a house channel. Telegram is another free avenue that's great. Google Drive has really been huge for us. We do all of our spreadsheets. We track everything through there. So I think we pay like $1.99 for Google just to have the big capacity to save stuff. So there's lots of free avenues out there for systems that you guys can use, no matter how big or small you are. That's
super cool. Yeah. So how do you vet a tenant? I know it's just like a very direct question, but is it any different than vetting a tenant for, say, your triplex than it is for the co-living place? And if so, I'd love for you to walk our listeners through kind of what your process is, or system, if you will, system and process for vetting a co-living tenant to make sure they're not going to go into your house and all of a sudden start a house fight with the other 7 tenants.
No, I mean, there's really the conversation is the same. I think the biggest thing is on my single family sides, I take it a step further and I will actually show up where they live unannounced because, I want to see how they live now because that'll tell me how they're going to treat my property before they move in. Now, in co-living, of course, we can't do that. We're just too big for that. But other than that, here's a prime example. You can screen someone till you're blue in the face. We just took an application this morning and, no background, no evictions. And he came back with a very recent eviction. And,
wow.
Unfortunately, you can screen someone all you can, but until you get that actual report back, you sometimes don't know what you're dealing with.
Yeah. So walk us through your process. So you get on a phone, you get on a call with them, or you have Dan get on a call with them. But what does it look like for you to like, hey, I get a lead, someone's interested in my co-living house, to like, yes, you've moved in. Like, what are those steps in that process?
So once we get on the phone with someone, I like to try to let them honestly talk as much as possible. Tell me about yourself. What do you do for work? What do you do for fun? What are your hours like? Are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? They tell me a lot about themselves. So if I'm thinking of putting them in a house and I know that they're a night person, where I have a lot of people who are, maybe they get up early to go to work, then that person probably will not be a good fit for that house. So I'll try to kind of move them to a different house where I think they would be a better fit. People love to talk about themselves. So you kind of let them lead the conversation and they'll tell you a whole bunch of things that you don't even have to ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then after that, if you feel like they are a good fit, is it just background check, credit check?
If we feel that they're a good fit, then the next thing will be to schedule that showing, get in front of them, meet them, let them see the house, let them meet some of the other tenants in the house. And if the showing goes well, then the next step would be to do the application.
That's awesome. So what I'm hearing you kind of say, and is almost like this is an interview, more. You know what I mean?
100%, yes. Yep.
You're almost so for maybe that's even, and I guess even for a single family, it's still kind of an interview of sorts.
Yeah.
But when you do the interview, you are actually looking for some of the interpersonal things that could cause a major issue.
Yes. And so what I always like to say is, hey, let's schedule that showing to see if this would be a good fit for us, meaning for them and for us, because it might not be a good fit for them. And we, of course, don't want someone moving in who would not be a good fit for the house because it's just going to cause problems down the road. Right.
I like that, though. It almost makes living in your co-living homes almost like more exclusive.
Yes.
Right. It's like, this is a privilege 100%. And not everybody gets in. Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So one of the big questions I get all the time, and I would even say not even questions, but just like I don't know what the right word is. People get on me for this, or they'll post some nasty comment on Facebook ad about one of our Facebook ads about it or something, is, they'll be like, there's no way you can actually put 7, 8, or 9 people in a house like this. That house is going to be dirty. There's going to be fights. There's going to, like, how does that work? Now, the funny thing is, like, I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters. So, like, having 10 people in a house is just like, I'm like, that was like my entire childhood, right? So, like, it doesn't actually seem that weird to me. But I think to the traditional person who's thinking, okay, I get it. I get the cash flow can be great if you have 7, 8, 9 people in. I looked at a house today. I didn't physically look at it, but I looked at a video that our realtor took. It was going to be like 8 or 9 bedrooms. And to most people, that's just a concept they can't fathom. So my question for you is, like, what's the secret sauce? Like, what makes that work? Like, what really, truly, if you had to boil it down, like, how does that work? Because even I sometimes am like, how does that work? I don't really know, but it works really well.
So it's actually kind of funny because, I'll go do a showing, and a lot of times I don't ever see anyone in the house. You would never know that 9 other people live there, which is weird. I mean, a lot of people work. People are on different schedules. Most people, honestly, just stay in their rooms. So it actually works very well. And the people who have reservations, I'm like, hey, but you should definitely still come and see the house, because you're going to see that it's a very well-run house. Cabinets are labeled, refrigerators labeled. You have locks on your bedroom door. It's all very systemized so that it's not just us throwing a bunch of people in a house. They're background checked, they're screened, they have a job. Like, these are all part of our requirements. Yeah.
That's so funny that you mention about, like, the people aren't even home, because I drove by one of our house, Southcrest, the other day.
Yes.
Because I was over there. We're selling that other one in that neighborhood, right?
Yep.
And I drove by Southcrest, and I was like expecting 3, 4, 5 cars, because is there 6 people that live in that house,
6
or 7?
guys, yep.
6,
Yeah.
6 guys. And there was no cars there.
Yeah.
I was like, where is everybody? Like, there's 6 adults. They're all at work, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because so you look for people who work, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting key to this whole thing.
Yeah, I think with co-living, it's part of one of our requirements that they do, have a job, they're employed, so they can pay the rent with a stable source of income. It also helps where we don't just have people sitting around in the houses all day long.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, we have an income requirement, right? So they've got to make 3 times whatever.
Yes, they need to make enough to be able to afford the rent.
So two questions. These are going to be kind of more rapid fire ones that I wanted to ask you. But, like, what would you say if you think back to your 3 years of doing co-living and having these different experiences? I want to ask 2 questions. One is, what's been maybe a story you could share that would be like the most inspirational? Like, just something that happened, or somebody that said something, or maybe one of the testimonials I know you've received recently. I got to watch some of those the other day. They were awesome, by the way. Like, what's just something, an anecdote, like something you can tell the people listening that would just, and I want to ask the opposite too, actually. I know at the beginning we said we might not share the opposite, but I want to ask, like, what's like a little mini horror story, or a little mini, like, the good and the bad. Let's do both. So what's a story that's, like, just beautiful and amazing that really made you go, like, glad we're doing co-living. And then I'll get you on the opposite side too.
So we have one tenant that comes to mind. I know that you know him. He was actually one of the very first tenants in Southcrest when you started this. His name is Randall. So he lived with you. Actually, I think it was at Stone Forest he lived with you. And then, so I didn't know him then. And then he came back about 2 years ago, and he has been a tenant of ours again. He's actually one of our house managers, and he just talks about all the time how great you are, talks about Rachel, how great Rachel is, and just how wonderful he thinks that Life Door is and what we're doing here. So he's just been a tenant that's had a lot of longevity with us, and he will sing our praises all day long because he thinks that we're just great, and co-living is awesome.
How long ago was it that he first came into our communities? I mean,
how long ago did you have Stone Forest? Because that was where he first lived with you.
So probably 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah. So And now he's been back with us for about 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I hope people that are listening are really picking up on this, because, what I want to pull out for people is what Jess is saying is this is not short-term housing. We're not short-term rentals, right?
Yeah, we
Jess
don't offer short-term.
Yeah. So initial lease terms are 12 months, right? And that's super cool, because I get a lot of this too. People will ask, well, okay, that's cool, but that just must be like super transitional housing. And it's like, no, it's not super transitional. Do you think the marketplace, Jess, is changing at all so that people are kind of accepting this as more of a model to live? Like, is it more of a long-term solution, or is it just for a certain niche? Or why does it work long-term for some people?
I think some people just want to save money. If you're a single person that is saving to maybe buy a house 4 or 5 years down the road, this is a great avenue. Your utilities are included. You pay rent one thing each month, and everything else is taken care of. It is also great where we do get people who are transitioning. They're going through a divorce. They have moved to a different city, and then they end up staying with us for, a long period of time. So I think we're able to kind of help people at all different stages in their life.
Yeah, that's so cool. So let's do the opposite question. What's an example or a story? I know Jess is like, I can tell a couple, but no, I mean, like, let's give maybe one or two that are just like something that happened, so we can paint in people's minds, like what's some crazy stuff that's happened that might not have happened in a single family rental or thing, but it happened in a co-living community.
So I think the biggest thing is just tenant, I don't want to say altercations, but tenant disagreements. We had one of our houses that 2 guys came at me about someone stole peanut butter. And so we always joke and we call it peanut butter gate, because I was like, you two are grown adults. I know 100%
Peanut butter gate.
You two can work the peanut butter situation out, This is not, I'm not a babysitter. I'm not your mom. You guys kind of just have to work this out. I think the other biggest thing is just dealing with, we've had a lot of insurance things lately, like with, I hate to say leaks, but we've had some water issues. So, those can happen on single family though too.
Right.
You kind of take the good with the bad with us, and it usually evens itself out, I guess you could say.
So what do you do? Because the leaks are, you're right, the leaks are not necessarily co-living specific, but maybe what is different is like if 2 or 3 bedrooms leak, you have to move 2 or 3 people versus just telling that single family, hey, can you just like not go to the basement for like a couple of weeks, right? We have to actually, their whole home flooded, it's their bedroom, right? So how did you deal with that? Actually, I'm curious. Okay, so tenant calls you, so what ended up happening, right, is people like water seep through the wall or whatever. But I'm curious for our listeners to hear from you as someone who's done this a while and is really good at this. How do you handle that from a tenant standpoint?
So renter's insurance, I tell everyone that they should really have renter's insurance. It's about $12 a month. It's way worth it, because if something happens, the homeowner's policy is only going to cover damage, not a tenant's damage if you have a renter in there. So I always tell them, make sure you have that to cover your belongings. We had 2 instances where we had, bad water damage, where a good bit of their stuff was destroyed. And so we did put them up in a hotel only because we had the fans in there, and with the water extraction, we kind of had to. So in good faith, we did put them up in a hotel. But, if we have an available room somewhere, I would always try to move them to an available room in that house. Like, hey, I know it might be a little uncomfortable, but you can just move here while we're having the work done, is what I always try to do first.
So you really just take care of them, serve their needs until we finish the work, basically.
Yeah, I always try to treat our tenants how I would want to be treated in, if the roles were reversed, if I was in that situation.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way of putting it. So what would you say to someone who's on the fence about investing in co-living, maybe getting their first co-living house, or is exploring this as a method for them to be financially free and have financial independence and invest? What would you say to that person who's maybe on the fence and is like, I want to do it, but it's different than what I've heard before or whatever? What would you say to that person?
Just do it. I mean, honestly, for the most part, it's all very good. You're helping people, you're providing affordable housing, you're giving yourself that extra set of income, you're putting away money for yourself, for your family down the road. I wouldn't let some of these smaller things hold you back. It's very manageable, especially if you only have one house. I mean, one house is a walk in the park. And I think you get into it, you get your house staged, you start getting tenants in there, you start seeing some money come in, and just have fun with it. I think that's, really the biggest thing. You're not really ever having a job if you're having fun with something. So just have fun with it.
Well said. And I think that brings up a great point. Like, how many people do you have to manage these 150 plus rooms, because you said one house is a walk in the park. So how many people do you have on your team to manage 150 plus rooms?
It's me, my assistant Dan, and then we have a maintenance guy. And Dan is remote. Dan is in the Philippines. So it's really just me and our maintenance guy that's actually physically here.
So that's lean.
Yes.
I know it's lean and you, so truly, those of you that are listening, one home, if she's doing 150 rooms. Now, Jess is a superstar, so you gotta pare back your expectations for yourself, but truly you could do one or two homes and people could still have a job or, do whatever they want to do on this. This could be a side gig for someone easily.
Yes. I think it's very important to, set your expectations with your tenants of what is an emergency, what is not an emergency, a timeline for non-emergency things, and just make sure your tenants know those things so you have a system in place so that it can all run smooth.
That's cool. What do you see? Oh, I wanted to mention one more thing, and that is that there are companies now, starting to actually manage co-living properties. Now, granted, they're not everywhere, but Pad Split is one of those. Alcove is another one. Live Homeroom is another one. I think Bungalow now is one. And Jess, you and I made the decision to do it in-house. That was really a decision I thought about, but we were doing so well with it, we wanted to kind of keep our culture more pure, for lack of a better word, more our own, right? And so I think we've done a really great job with that. But what do you see as the future of co-living? You and I are sitting down in 5 years from now having a conversation, doing a podcast again. What do you see as the future?
Well, I think affordable housing is going to become something that we're going to see a lot more of. Prices on things continue to go up right now. Interest rates are higher than they were. So I think you're going to see a lot of people holding off on buying right now to just kind of see what happens with the economy. So I feel the rental market will continue to grow, especially with what we're offering, where, someone can step in, not have to worry about paying utilities or anything, save a little bit of money. So when rates do come down, they can buy something. So I see co-living continuing to just climb. We get anywhere from, some days we get 30, messages about our properties and stuff. So there is, Charlotte's a pretty big market. So I do see it, especially in major cities, just continuing to grow. Yeah.
That reminds me of, that's beautiful. That reminds me of one more thing I wanted to ask you, which was, because I get this question a lot, and I know some of the listeners will have this question of how do you know if it'll work in your market? We know it works in our market. And like you said, Charlotte's a pretty big market. But how do you know, or what would you say to someone who's I just don't know if it'll work in my market? And how would they test that, or how would they determine if this is a good fit for where they live, wherever that happens to be?
So I think super rural areas, I don't think we're there yet on co-living being successful. But when you bought Ebenezer and Rock Hill, I didn't think that Ebenezer would would do well. And we filled that house 9 bedrooms in like less than 30 days. So I think kind of seeing if there's a college around you, if there's a major city within, like 30 minutes, I think those are probably good factors of this working, based on location for you.
Yeah. And I know something you've done in the past that you've told me about that was really smart was just running test ads too. Can you tell us a little bit about maybe how that might work for people?
Yeah, so I believe we did that. We've done that with a few houses before. We did it with Tupper Road, Ebenezer, and one other, but we'll just basically put up an ad just like we would any other house that we have. We state in there that, we don't yet own it. And we just try to kind of get a feel for, hey, would this be a good house for us to pursue co-living in? And if we're not getting the messages on the platforms, then we know that it probably will not be a good investment for us and we should keep looking.
Right. So you'll actually put an ad out there. You'll find some photos from a home nearby and just basically like try to create a waiting list. You'll blast it out on the platforms.
Yep.
What platforms are the most helpful when it comes to co-living?
Marketplace on Facebook, Zillow. You can't actually post on Zillow, but they'll syndicate out to Hot Pats, and Roomies and Roomster have been 2 great platforms we started using recently that we have a good bit of traffic that comes in through. They're specifically looking for a room within a house.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's awesome. It's funny. I was talking with Jason Wallace not too long ago. Jason, Jess, he does co-living in our same town. Yeah. And he kind of learned the model from us, truthfully. He may disagree with that point, but that's kind of how I feel like it went down. But anyway, he was telling me the other day, and I think I told you this, he was like, I still get most of my leads from Craigslist.
Which is crazy to me.
I know. I was like, I don't even think we use Craigslist anymore. And then what's funny is I saw someone else posted on our community page, our Facebook page. We have the co-living investors page, and they were saying that they got most of their tenants from Craigslist. And I was still blowing my mind that Craigslist, like, it's around, it works, it exists. So I don't know if you're listening to this, you can try everything. I think of it as like, It doesn't hurt to be in every window if people are window shopping. Like if there's 100 people on that platform and they get to look at your thing, like,
exactly.
why not? Yeah. As long as you can manage the different platforms. So, that's awesome. Anything else you want us to know as we wrap up here, Jess, about co-living or your experience or anything that I've missed that you think would help someone who's on the fence or looking to invest in this or looking to go all in on this? What would any final or closing thoughts?
It's been a great experience for me on the managing side of things. So, kind of like I said before, just go for it, just do it. I do think that it is very lucrative. I see the numbers. I run the numbers each month. I know what, the company brings in. So there is power in numbers to do this. That's
awesome. You are a true wealth of knowledge. You know that?
Thank you. I appreciate
that. This, and it's cool. Like, you're a true wealth of knowledge, especially this subject, and more people are getting interested in this. I know this because I'm on more the coaching side, and Jess, you've come in now and started helping me with some of the coaching. It's been awesome because people ask me questions and I'm like, I think this is the right answer, but why don't you ask Jess?
Yeah.
So Jess and I have recently been helping with a company out in San Francisco that's the largest co-living company in San Francisco, and helping them ramp their systems up and find how to increase their conversions and fill their rooms. And so it's cool that you have this experience and this knowledge in an area that is so up and coming. I call it a blue ocean. Like, there's the red oceans, and the red oceans are like the multi-family space is a red ocean. Red ocean means it's like full of blood, and everybody's attacking each other, and everybody's trying to get a piece of the action. And it's like, it's very bloody because there's so many people in that space. And then you go over to co-living, it's like, there's not very many peaceful people. That's like peaceful and calm, and it's a new opportunity, right? And I just think you're in just such a cool place to help so many people, and I know we're working together on that, and just excited for the future. So thank you for being on and being willing to just share all that you just shared with the world. And
Yeah. Also, too, I mean, we're seeing success with your students that are doing this. So, they're buying properties, so we're watching them fill their rooms and go through the process. So it does work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So there you go, listeners. You heard it from Jess herself. Co-Living Master University and Co-Living Inner Circle. Those are our two programs.
They do work,
and
yes.
you get access to Jess. She supports and helps. She's awesome. All right, Jess. Well, hey, until next time, thank you so much for your time. This will be incredibly valuable for people who are wondering about some of those details about co-living and how it works and how it operates. You've been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate it.